The movie opens with Tom and his family enjoying their time together in the middle of the ocean. Julia takes some food to her daughter Cassie. Julia, feeling like swimming, decides to venture into the water without informing anyone. Meanwhile, Tom teaches Ben how to fish, and Cassie, oblivious to her surroundings, listens to music with her headphones on. After floating and paddling for a while, Julia begins to sense that something is off, but she ignores it the first time, while Tom gives Ben the fishing string to try it by himself. Immediately, the compass starts spinning, showing the change in weather, but Tom didn't notice it. Later, Julia notices something strange again, whether it's a change in temperature or something moving past her. As she tries swimming back, she soon realizes that she is unable to swim. Julia screams for help, but having swum far from the boat, her voice goes unheard. Eventually, Tom hears her cries and realizes that she is drowning. He calls Cassie to help hold the boat still. He quickly maneuvers the boat toward her, but Cassie insists on jumping in to save her. However, Tom says no, asking her to stay and keep the boat steady while he goes for the rescue. Then, he jumps in and manages to rescue her. Afterward, Tom tells them that before they go swimming, they need to inform the others first and never swim away from the boat. Later, Tom sneaks in on Julia in the shower and compliments how beautiful she is and how lucky he is to have her. That night, the family gathers to celebrate Ben's 13th birthday. Tom gifts him a new laptop, Cassie gives him a ghost mask, and their mother presents him with a Dominican bracelet. To capture the moment, they all take a picture together. Later, Cassie's phone rings. It's her boyfriend, Adam. Wanting privacy, she steps outside to talk to him. During their video call, Cassie notices something unusual: a massive thunderstorm and dark clouds surrounding the city, an uncommon sight. Suddenly, the network connection cuts out, leaving them both unsettled. Shortly after, an unexpected splash is heard outside. Curious, Ben steps out and is stunned to see a large number of whales surrounding the boat, an astonishing sight that even Tom, an experienced oceanographer, finds puzzling. Determined to investigate the strange occurrence, Tom jumps inside the water to examine the situation. However, while checking for possible damage, he accidentally sustains a deep shoulder wound from the boat's propellers. Julia, being a doctor, tends to Tom's wound and carefully stitches it up. As she works, Tom explains that he had an eerie feeling of something massive behind him. When he turned to check, he accidentally cut himself on the propeller. To make matters worse, one of the propellers is damaged, leaving the group unsettled. Tom and his family eventually find themselves on a deep disaster. Meanwhile, Julia attempts to call for help over the radio, while Tom reassures everyone that they are within a shipping route and should be rescued soon. Cassie, however, grows increasingly frustrated and worried about her boyfriend. Tom tries the radio again, but no one responds, heightening his concern, especially since they only have enough food and water to last 4 days. The situation takes a terrifying turn when Tom notices what appear to be meteors falling from the sky. Acting quickly, he and his family climb back onto the boat to get a clearer look. Driven by urgency, he attempts to steer the boat away, only to discover that the engine has failed. This realization deepens their confusion and fear. Upon closer observation, Tom realizes these aren't meteors at all. They are satellites crashing to Earth, hinting at a potential global catastrophe. That night, their ordeal worsens as the boat is caught in a violent storm. They rush inside, shutting the windows to prevent debris from breaking in. Acting quickly, Tom retrieves life jackets and distributes them to his family. Suddenly, Julia begins bleeding profusely from her nose, while Cassie starts coughing up an unusual substance. By morning, the family awakens to an unimaginable sight. Countless dead fish surround them, and their boat is inexplicably stranded on dry land. To their shock, the ocean has completely vanished, leaving behind a barren landscape where water once flowed. Their arrival on land appears to be the result of a massive environmental upheaval, possibly linked to the satellite crashes. These bizarre events suggest a larger catastrophe, one that may be disrupting natural systems on a global scale. Tom's choice to stay with the boat and his attempts to navigate the crisis have unintentionally led them to this surreal and disorienting reality. Cassie checks her phone, only to find there's no signal. Meanwhile, Ben playfully brings over some dead crabs, attempting to scare his father. Tom discovers that the Earth's magnetic poles have reversed, causing the ocean to flow onto the land. This revelation explains why the waters have vanished and why their boat is now stranded. As the reality sinks in, Cassie panics, realizing that something must have happened to Adam. Julia tries to comfort her, assuring her that everything will be fine. Meanwhile, Tom works on repairing the radio, while Julia gathers their remaining food supplies. Outside, Ben inflates balloons to use as distress signals in case someone spots them. Eventually, Tom manages to connect with Now, a deep-sea diver, through the radio. Now confirms Tom's theory and warns that the poles may shift again within a week, potentially triggering another catastrophic event. He urges them to seek higher ground for safety. Understanding that their boat cannot withstand the coming chaos, Tom decides they should join Now's deep-diving ship. However, Now's vessel has room for only 2 more people. In an act of sacrifice, Tom and Julia plead with Now to take Cassie and Ben instead. Now agrees and provides them with his location. After checking the coordinates, Tom estimates that it will take them 2 to 3 days to reach him. The next day, as the family prepares to leave the boat, a stranger approaches with his dog. Believing him to be another survivor, Tom steps forward and offers him a bottle of water in a gesture of kindness. However, the stranger suddenly turns violent. He knocks Tom down with the bottle and then brutally stabs and kills him. Julia, who witnesses the attack from behind, screams in agony and rushes toward the boat to protect the children. The stranger hurls a spade at her, but it only grazes her arm, leaving a minor wound. Julia quickly gets inside with Cassie and Ben, locking the door behind her. She hides the children under the couch and hands Cassie a flare gun, instructing her to use it if necessary. Then, armed with a knife, she hides in the bathroom. The stranger breaks in, scavenges for food, and begins searching for her. When he opens the bathroom door, Julia is nowhere to be found, only a hole in the floor leading under the boat. Just then, the stranger's dog starts barking at Julia, revealing her hiding spot. Driven by the primal need to protect her children, Julia kills the dog. As she scrambles back inside the boat, the stranger seizes her by the leg, drags her across the floor, and slams her head against a chair before attempting to strangle her to death. At that moment, Cassie fires the flare gun, temporarily driving the attacker back. However, the flare ignites a fire on the boat. In the chaos, Julia gathers their belongings and flees with the children. As they escape, the boat explodes, but the stranger survives. Seeing that the stranger has survived, Julia grabs the children and flees, seeking safety in the barren landscape. They stop to rest along the way, but Ben, still in denial about his father's death, refuses to drink any water. Meanwhile, Julia checks the map for their next route. She reassures Ben that he shouldn't blame himself for anything, and they continue their journey. As they walk, Ben gets distracted and stops to play with a dead shark. Julia, using her telescope, spots the stranger trailing them and closing in fast. Without hesitation, they take off, running as far as possible while the man watches them from a distant hill. Later, Julia checks again and sees that they have put considerable distance between themselves and the stranger. Relieved, they continue their mission. With Ben showing signs of dehydration, Julia gives him the last drop of their remaining water, leading to a brief argument with Cassie before they press on. As night falls, they search for shelter and eventually come across a derelict plane, deciding to spend the night there. Inside, Julia shares a small meal with her children. As she looks at a family photo, she is overcome with grief, missing Tom. Cassie, sensing her mother's sorrow, asks once more to hear the story of how she and their late father met. Later that night, Cassie wakes up and steps outside to relieve herself. Suddenly, the stranger emerges from the darkness, creeping up behind her, ready to attack. Before he can strike, Julia, fueled by an unbreakable will to protect her children, launches at him and stabs him repeatedly, ensuring he is truly dead this time. The next morning, they discover something disturbing. The man's corpse appears to have been partially devoured by an unknown animal. Now even more concerned for their own safety, Julia and the children quickly move on. As they reach the top of a mountain, Ben rushes ahead of Julia and Cassie. Julia calls after him, but he ignores her and drinks from a pothole filled with water and dead fish. Julia and Cassie immediately stop him, but the damage is done. As they continue walking, Ben starts feeling unwell. They lay him down and use nearby materials to build a temporary shelter. To reduce the risk of infection, Julia injects him with antibiotics. That night, Julia is awakened by a strange noise outside. Stepping out to investigate, she is horrified to see a swarm of predatory crabs emerging, creatures that have thrived in the absence of the ocean. Realizing the danger, she wakes the children, and they run, desperately searching for safety. In the distance, they spot a shipping container and a group of survivors. Begging for help, Julia and her children rush toward them, but the survivors, fearing for their own lives, lock them out. With no other option, Julia and the kids fight their way onto the container ship. However, in the chaos, one of the crabs slashes Julia's leg, wounding her. Inside the container, they realize the danger isn't over. The crabs find their way in through a hole, brutally massacring the trapped survivors below. Julia quickly ties up her wound before exhaustion overtakes her, falling asleep while Cassie and Ben remain awake, deeply worried about her. This ordeal cements Julia's unwavering determination to protect her children, no matter the cost. The following morning, Julia wakes to a dusty wind blowing through the air and quickly realizes the kids are missing. Panicked, she calls out for them and arms herself with a gun from one of the dead survivors. After searching, she finds Cassie and Ben, reuniting with them inside the container. Realizing she needs to treat her wound, Julia cauterizes it using bullet powder. Once the winds settle, they drink water found inside one of the containers. While searching for supplies, Julia discovers a working radio and manages to contact Now, who is severely injured. He informs her that one of his colleagues has been killed and warns her about the crabs. They are deep-sea arthropods forced to the surface due to the ocean's disappearance, now attacking humans out of starvation. Julia asks for directions to reach him, and Now, as a beacon of hope, fires a flare to signal his location. Seeing the flare in the distance, Julia and the children press on. However, their journey is fraught with danger. To reach Now, they must cross an unstable rift, a treacherous path that could collapse at any moment. Despite the risk, Julia insists they move forward, knowing that the deep-diving ship is their only chance of survival. As they carefully navigate the terrain, a loose rock suddenly triggers a landslide. Acting on instinct, Julia pushes Cassie and Ben to safety, but in doing so, she is left stranded on the other side of the rift. Realizing there is no way for her to cross, and that Now's boat can only accommodate 2 people, Julia makes the ultimate sacrifice. She urges Cassie and Ben to go on without her, promising she will find another way and meet them later. In reality, she knows she is saying goodbye, choosing her children's survival over her own. Cassie and Ben climb over the hill and arrive at the ship, where they find Now, barely clinging to life. Now, knowing his fate is sealed, tells them to take the boat and leave. But Cassie, refusing to abandon her mother, makes a bold decision. She races back to the rift, risking her life to save Julia. Just as Julia is about to be overtaken by the predatory crabs, Cassie arrives in time, her determination and quick thinking giving them a chance to escape. Together, they sprint toward the ship, crabs swarming behind them. With great effort, they manage to climb aboard Now's boat, narrowly escaping the creatures. Unfortunately, Now succumbs to the crabs, but his sacrifice ensures that Julia, Cassie, and Ben can use the boat to survive. Inside the vessel, the family braces for what comes next. The Earth's magnetic poles begin to reverse again, causing violent turbulence as the ocean starts to return. Strapped in tightly, they endure relentless attacks from the arthropods trying to break in. As chaos unfolds, Julia experiences vivid flashes of memories, moments with Tom, Cassie, and Ben, fueling her will to survive. After what feels like an eternity, the storm finally subsides. When they awaken, they cautiously open the ship's hatch and discover they are safely afloat near a city. Against all odds, they have survived. The family's survival is rooted in their unyielding bond and mutual sacrifices. Julia's earlier decision to risk her life for her children sets an example of courage and selflessness. In the end, Julia embraces her children, relieved and grateful for their survival. The family's journey underscores the power of love, sacrifice, and perseverance in overcoming even the most insurmountable odds. The mysterious voiceover in the credits hints at Julia reflecting on their harrowing yet transformative experience. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more movie recaps.